It started as a simple business trip. John had arrived in the small town for a meeting, exhausted from the long drive. He pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of the Grand Elm Hotel, a place that looked charming from the outside but carried an odd, musty smell that hit him the moment he stepped inside. The receptionist, a pale woman with unnerving stillness in her eyes, handed him a key with a faint smile, warning him that room 217 had been vacant for months. Yet somehow it had been booked in his name. John shrugged it off as a clerical error and made his way up the narrow staircase. The hallway smelled of old carpet and a strange metallic scent that made his stomach churn. Room 217 awaited at the end of a flickering corridor. The door opened smoothly, but inside, the air felt thicker, colder, as if the room existed in a different dimension from the rest of the hotel. The first night was uneventful, or so he thought. John lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling when he noticed a shadow shift across the room. He dismissed it as a trick of the streetlight through the curtains, but when he turned on the lamp, the shadow did not disappear. It moved independently of any light source. John felt a chill crawl up his spine, and sleep refused to come. By the second night, the room had grown stranger. Objects were slightly moved from their original places, even though he was certain he hadn't touched them. The mirror on the dresser reflected not just him, but faint outlines of figures standing behind him, vanishing whenever he spun around. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m., though it was unplugged, and when he answered, all he heard was heavy breathing and whispers calling his name. John's sense of reality began to fray. He left the room briefly, only to return and find the bed neatly made with sheets that were not his own, and a note written in a shaky hand reading, "You shouldn't be here." The third night pushed him to the brink. The shadows grew bolder, whispering secrets he did not want to hear, telling him things that only he knew. The walls seemed to pulse and breathe, and the air itself felt alive. He tried to leave, but the hallway stretched impossibly long, doors appearing and disappearing like a nightmare. Each time he forced himself back to room 217, it had shifted slightly. The furniture rearranged as though it were a living organism. By morning, he stumbled into the lobby, trembling and pale, only to find the receptionist gone, and a construction crew claiming that the hotel had been abandoned for years. John's reservation never existed, and room 217 was nothing but an empty, crumbling shell. John never returned to that town, but sometimes, when driving late at night, he swore he saw a flickering light through hotel windows that weren't supposed to exist. A room that waited, hungry for its next guest. Asterisk. The dole arrived without explanation, sitting neatly on the doorstep of the Harris family's home one quiet Sunday morning. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with string, with no return address or note. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary antique doll, porcelain face, glassy blue eyes, and a faded lace dress, yellowed with age. Sarah Harris assumed it had been delivered by mistake, but something about the doll made her hesitate before touching it. She brought it inside and placed it on the dining table, planning to call the post office later from the moment it entered. The house, the atmosphere felt different, heavier, like the air before a storm. That night, Sarah woke to a soft sound, the faint creak of floorboards downstairs. She dismissed it as the house settling, until she heard it again, slow and deliberate, in the morning. The doll was no longer on the dining table. It sat upright on the living room couch, its glass eyes staring directly at the hallway. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She asked her husband Mark if he had moved it, but he swore he hadn't touched it, laughing nervously. They agreed one of them must have done it without realizing. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. The doll appeared in different rooms, always sitting upright, always facing someone. Doors creaked open on their own, lights flickered, and cold spots lingered in the hallways. Their daughter Emma refused to sleep, insisting the doll whispered to her at night, telling her secrets and calling her name. Sarah checked the baby monitor one evening and froze when she heard a faint voice humming through the static, a sound too clear to be interference. One night, Mark decided enough was enough. He locked the doll in the basement, sealing it inside a storage box. For the first time in days, the house felt quiet, peaceful. But at exactly 3:12 a.m., a loud crash echoed through the home. They rushed downstairs to find the basement door wide open, the storage box shattered, and the doll sitting neatly at the bottom of the stairs, its porcelain face cracked into what looked disturbingly like a smile. Terrified, Sarah searched online and discovered reports of similar dolls appearing unannounced, always followed by unexplained disturbances. Some families claimed the dolls were connected to spirits that fed on attention and fear. Others said the dolls could not be destroyed, only passed on. The next morning, Sarah wrapped the doll in the same brown paper and placed it on a stranger's doorstep across town, desperation outweighing guilt. The disturbances stopped immediately. The house returned to normal, and Emma slept peacefully again. Years later, Sarah still feels a chill when she thinks about that doll, and sometimes, late at night, she swears she hears faint humming drifting through the house, a reminder that some things are never truly gone. It was a Friday night when Emily, a 17-year-old babysitter, arrived at the Johnsons' suburban home. The parents had gone out to a late dinner, leaving her in charge of their 2 young children. She settled into the living room with a book while the kids played quietly. The house was warm and familiar, yet there was a tension in the air she couldn't explain. Around 8:30 p.m. the phone rang, a shrill, unexpected sound in the otherwise silent house. Emily picked it up. "Hello," she said, but only static answered her. She hung up, assuming it was a wrong number. Minutes later, it rang again. This time a whisper came through the line. "Are you watching the children?" Emily froze, her heart racing. She looked around the room. The kids were giggling innocently on the rug. She forced a laugh and said, "Yes, everything's fine." But the voice on the other end chuckled, low and menacing, then hung up. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was a prank, but the calls kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. The caller seemed to know exactly what she was doing, asking, "Are they asleep yet?" and commenting on her movements. Emily's unease grew into fear. She locked the doors and checked the windows, every creak and shadow making her jump. By 10 p.m., the calls became frantic, the voice shouting, "I'm inside, I see you." Emily dropped the phone, fumbling for her parents' emergency number. Only then did she realize the line was dead, cut entirely. Panic gripped her as she glanced at the staircase from the darkness. She could see a faint figure standing at the top, watching her, its features obscured, yet the malice in its posture was unmistakable. Emily grabbed the kids and ran to the kitchen, trying the back door, but it was locked from the outside. She was trapped, the phone line dead. The figure descended slowly, each step echoing in the silent house. She remembered the closet under the stairs, dragging the children inside, holding her breath. She listened as the intruder walked through the living room, muttering and tapping on furniture as if searching for them. Hours passed like this, until finally, just before dawn, the figure left, slipping away into the night. Emily waited until the first light to call the police. When officers arrived, they found the house intact, but the front door's lock had been picked, and there were muddy footprints throughout the living room, trailing toward the staircase, but vanishing near the closet. The children had slept through the entire ordeal, unaware of the terror surrounding them. The police had no suspects, and the calls had left no trace. Emily never returned to babysitting, and the Johnsons eventually moved away. Even years later, Emily remembered that whisper, the one that had made her blood run cold. "Are you watching the children?" A voice that had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A presence that reminded her that some dangers hide in plain sight.